For those of you that live in Michigan, if you're new to car insurance, you might be questioning yourself is, how come my prices are so high? And what is this medical coordination piece that we're talking about? Also, what's this personal injury protection that everybody mentions? Today we're going to go over the main pieces of the medical portion of the Michigan car insurance. We'll try to keep it as less boring as possible, but there are some interesting pieces that actually could save you a ton of money. So stay tuned, we're going to dive into that right now. The largest piece is that you have to know that Michigan's what's called a no-fault state. So essentially the easiest way to think of that is if you have an accident, it doesn't matter. You go to your car insurance, the other person goes to their car insurance, and they subrogate or they fight in the background behind that. They don't want us getting involved as the people. They want the insurance companies to really just pay it out, fix it, whatever coverage you have, and then they'll figure out the rest later. That doesn't mean you're off the hook if you're the one that is at fault, so there are ways to think about that as well. But the biggest piece is what happens if you get injured in that medical claim. So if you don't pick the right coverage, you have to find out what's the best route for you to go. If you are looking for a new car insurance, I'll put a link in the description below where you can do a quote with us and we can get a little bit more in depth with this. But let's explain the pieces. So the main piece that everybody's used to is something called coordinated medical benefits. And that essentially means is who's going to pay your medical bills first, because the Michigan says you have to be covered regardless. So if you get hurt, either your car insurance is going to pay or your personal medical insurance is going to pay. Now, your Medicare, Medicaid, any governmental type of insurance for medical does not coordinate because technically the car insurance is from the government, is from Michigan, and they're not going to pay themselves to pay a claim, if that makes sense. Essentially, it's a loss-loss. So the state would lose twice, to where some people don't like the state's medical and they have their own, or they have a job where that job allows them to have this extraordinary great medical plan to where they do want to coordinate that and say, if I get hurt, forget the state of Michigan, you can be my backup. And we'll go to my personal medical plan. I have a low deductible, I have this, I have that. I'll go there first. So that's one way to cut the bill down. Some of the caveats that you got to be careful with is most companies don't coordinate with Michigan because what happens is they lose out if you get in a major claim. So a lot of these medical companies will say, no, we don't cover at fault or not at fault accidents, essentially anything regarding cars. So if that's excluded on your policy, you can't coordinate that medical with the insurance policy that you have. That's where having the right agent plays a factor. If you don't have a great agent, like I said in the description below, otherwise talk to your agent and get a little bit more advice to see if your policy coordinates. The easiest way for you to find out is just to call your medical insurance and just say, do you coordinate with the state of Michigan law? Be careful because most of those health insurance companies don't really know the laws in Michigan, so a lot of them won't understand what you're talking about. So just be heads up that you might have to go to a couple people to find that out. Fortunately, that's just the way that it is because Michigan is the only state in the United States that offers that. The next piece is the medical portion that you have to carry in the state of Michigan. That's what we call personal injury protection, and that PIP or personal injury protection is what's going to cover your medical if you get injured. Now, that way that this is separate is because this is what's required by the state. The coordination, you don't have to have your own medical, whatever the case is. Michigan will pick up that bill to the limits that are set. Those limits is what we're talking about now. That's the personal injury protection. And what those limits offer is what you can cover for a claim. Here's where Michigan allows you to choose some different options. This is something that they just implemented a few years back to where now you can pick, do I want the old school style of medical? The best is what I see probably over 70% of the time, which is carrying the unlimited package, which that's as easy as it sounds. If something happens medically and you're injured, there's no limit to the amount of care that you're going to get as far as the medical in the doctor, right? So if you have a surgery, you have emergency surgery, you go in a coma, whatever that case is, that's the in-hospital. That's essentially the medical that we're talking about unlimited. Now that unlimited package comes with a handful of other things like out-term care. So when you actually leave the hospital and you're returning back and forth for surgeries or whatever the case is, you have to have someone take care of you outside of that. So that's where that unlimited package plays the biggest factor. One of the reasons we're praised and hated for, because the cost is the hate, the praise is that the coverage is amazing. So the coverage gets you outside a hospital where it pays up to 56, I believe, hours of attending care. So someone will take care of you. Maybe there's a wheelchair ramp that has to be built for the next 18 months where you can't walk straight or you have to do X, Y, and Z. And so you have all of those pieces that you can cover there. Michigan understands that not everybody can afford that cost of insurance. if you just wanted to buy the best plan, you can go to a medical company, even though it's usually more expensive. But what they offer is allowing you to lower that medical down to $500,000. Be careful, because once you start doing that, you're going to lose that attending care. It rips apart that whole package. That unlimited package is one major piece. Now you've got little bits and pieces. They've got death benefits, the outpatient care, or the long-term care as they call it. All those little pieces start to break up a little bit. So when we choose that $500,000 limit, we can. It's less expensive. It'll probably cut off a good chunk of the percentage, but then we lose some of those pieces that we can start to add back in, but now we're starting to get back to that same cost. So that $500,000 is a decent amount. I would say most of accidents in Michigan don't go above $500,000. They actually don't go above the next level, which is the $250,000 limit. If you want to go $250,000, that's another option. And now we start diving into qualifications. So you have to qualify if you want to go lower than that to have lower medical. Essentially, the state of Michigan is saying that, yeah, we'll let you do $250,000, but if you go below that, we want you to have some care that you have from us. So essentially what that's saying is you have Medicaid and Medicare. If you have one of those, you have lower options to go forward. I'm not going to dive too far into that because I actually have a video that I'll link at the end that goes very in depth in that, where we actually go through exactly what those pieces are. So Mark, yeah, I get all these confusing things. You just said medical here, medical there, all of that crap. But what is it actually going to cost me? Like, how much does it save? So yes, it does make a big difference in savings. Essentially, if you opt out completely, if you're on Medicare, for example, you can knock over half of your policy cost of that medical off. There is one little thing that has changed recently this year. So we essentially got some money back a few years back when this plan started. I think 2021 is when this began. So July 1st of 2021 was when all of this changed. And we ended up getting about $200 or $400 per car back. Long story short, there was a mix-up. Essentially, the state had to repay some of that. So you're seeing what's called a recoupment fee on your policy, to where some of the money's going back. So we all technically pay in. It's a per car cost. Every car right now is averaging about $48 per car. There's difference with classic cars and motorcycles and things like that, but we won't dive too far into that. Essentially, the cost on average is $48 per car per year. So you might see half of that if you have a 6-month policy. We're paying that part, and that's called the MCCA fee. That's the Michigan Catastrophic Claims Association, which is essentially tied to that personal injury protection. It's essentially the association that controls that. Either route you go, you have to pay a little bit per car for the medical for that piece. Now, going forward, if that fund gets large enough to where it doesn't need the extra funds, which has happened, that's why we got money back last time, and they don't have that, those that are opted out won't necessarily have to pay anything, although it's probably going to be a couple years before that changes. So if you're wondering if it's a good fit, if you want to save several $100s on your car insurance, check out the link in the description below. We'll go a little bit more in depth, get you in touch with an agent that can explain it. Otherwise, if you want to learn right now more of the details in the 5 to 6, I think even 7 levels of the personal injury protection, it's mainly what we're talking about, I'll put a link in the description right here. Feel free to check that out. If you're new to car insurance and you're trying to look at what coverages you should carry, check out our Insurance 101 guide. I'm Mark with Valor Insurance. We'll see you soon.